The sound of a woman gasping for air. That's what everyone remembers most. Not the music, not the flowers, not even the white dress that cost more than some people make in a month. Just that sound, a desperate, hollow gasp that echoed through the bridal suite like a warning no one wanted to hear. When Sarah Mitchell collapsed behind that locked door on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, her mother screamed, her bridesmaids froze, and her fiancé, standing just outside, felt his heart drop into his stomach. But here's what nobody knew in that moment. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't bad luck. This was the result of a choice that started 6 months earlier, in a small boutique on the corner of 5th and Main, where a seamstress with steady hands and a reputation for miracles promised Sarah something every bride dreams of: the perfect silhouette. But perfection, as Sarah would soon discover, has a cost. And sometimes, that cost is measured in breaths you can no longer take. Now, I need you to understand something before we go any further. This isn't a story about vanity. It's not a cautionary tale meant to shame anyone who wants to look beautiful on their wedding day. This is about pressure, the kind that builds slowly, invisibly, until it becomes unbearable. The kind that makes smart, capable women ignore their own bodies, their own instincts, their own voices. Because somewhere along the way, we've been taught that beauty requires suffering, that discomfort is just part of the package, that if you want to be remembered, if you want that perfect photograph, that flawless moment, you have to endure. But what happens when enduring becomes dangerous? What happens when the thing meant to make you feel beautiful starts stealing the very breath from your lungs? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sarah Mitchell grew up in a small suburb just outside Philadelphia. Middle child, quiet. The kind of girl who always did what was expected. She graduated high school with honors, went to state college, got a degree in marketing, and landed a decent job at a mid-sized firm downtown. She wasn't rich, but she was comfortable. She wasn't famous, but she was liked. And when she met Tom Bradley at a mutual friend's birthday party 3 years ago, she thought she'd finally found the one piece of her life that had been missing. Tom was everything her mother approved of. Stable job as an accountant, good family, no red flags. He proposed on a rainy Tuesday evening in their apartment. No ring yet, just a promise and a nervous smile. She said yes before he even finished the sentence. The wedding planning started immediately. Sarah's mother, Linda, had been waiting for this moment since Sarah was born. Linda's own wedding, 32 years ago, had been small. Too small, she always said. A courthouse ceremony with 2 witnesses and a reception at a local diner. She'd worn a borrowed dress. There were no flowers, no photographer, no memory she could hold onto the way she wanted to. So when Sarah got engaged, Linda saw it as her second chance. A chance to do it right. A chance to create the wedding she never had. And Sarah, being Sarah, didn't push back. She never did. She loved her mother. She wanted her happy. So, when Linda suggested they go dress shopping at the most expensive bridal boutique in the city, Sarah agreed. When Linda insisted on a guest list of 200 people, half of whom Sarah had never met, Sarah nodded. And when Linda booked an appointment with a seamstress named Mrs. Delacroix, known for creating custom gowns that transformed brides into what Linda called absolute perfection, Sarah followed along. Mrs. Delacroix's boutique was tucked away on a quiet street. The kind of place you'd walk past without noticing unless you knew it was there. Inside, it smelled like lavender and old fabric. The walls were lined with sketches of gowns, each more elaborate than the last. Mrs. Delacroix herself was a small woman, maybe 70, with silver hair pulled back tight and hands that moved with the precision of a surgeon. She looked at Sarah the way a sculptor looks at marble, not as a person, but as a project. She circled Sarah slowly, taking measurements, humming to herself. Then she stopped, looked Sarah directly in the eyes, and said something Sarah would replay in her mind 1,000 times later. "You have a beautiful frame, darling, but we can make it unforgettable. Trust me." Linda beamed. Sarah smiled. And just like that, the plan was set. The first fitting was 3 months before the wedding. The gown was stunning, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves and a train that seemed to go on forever. But it was the corset that caught everyone's attention. Built into the dress itself, reinforced with steel boning, it was designed to cinch Sarah's waist down to a size she hadn't been since high school. Mrs. Delacroix laced it up slowly, pulling the ribbons tight, tighter, tighter still. Sarah felt her ribs compress. Her breath shortened. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her waist looked impossibly small. Her posture was perfect. She looked like a bride from a magazine. Linda clapped her hands together. That's it. That's the one. Sarah tried to smile, but it felt like her lungs were being squeezed in a vice. She told herself it was normal, that all brides feel this way, that beauty is uncomfortable. Mrs. Delacroix adjusted the laces one more time and said, "You'll get used to it, dear. By the wedding day, it'll feel like second nature." But it didn't. Over the next 2 months, Sarah had 4 more fittings. Each time, the corset felt tighter. Each time, she felt a little more lightheaded, a little more breathless. She mentioned it once to Linda. "Mom, I don't think I can breathe in this thing." Linda waved her off. "Every bride says that, honey. You'll be fine. It's just nerves." Sarah wanted to believe her. She wanted to trust that her mother knew best, so she stopped complaining. She stopped mentioning the ache in her ribs, the tingling in her fingers when the corset was laced too tight, the way her vision blurred sometimes when she stood too quickly. She told herself it was temporary. Just one day. Just a few hours. She could endure anything for a few hours. Tom noticed, though. 2 weeks before the wedding, he walked into the bedroom while Sarah was trying on the dress at home, practicing walking in it. She was leaning against the dresser, breathing hard, her face pale. He asked if she was okay. She lied, and said she was fine. He didn't believe her. "Sarah, you don't look fine. You look like you're about to pass out." She laughed it off, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. "I'm just tired. Wedding stress. You know?" He stared at her for a long moment, then said something she'd remember later. "You don't have to wear that dress. You don't have to do any of this if it's hurting you." She kissed him on the cheek and told him not to worry. But deep down, she knew he was right. She just didn't know how to stop. The morning of the wedding arrived faster than Sarah expected. She woke up at 5 in the morning, her stomach in knots. The bridal suite at the hotel was already buzzing with activity. Hairstylist, makeup artist, photographer, bridesmaids, her mother, everyone, talking at once, laughing, taking pictures. Sarah sat in the middle of it all, feeling strangely detached, like she was watching her own life from a distance. The dress hung on a mannequin in the corner, waiting. At 7:30, it was time to put it on. 2 of her bridesmaids helped her step into it carefully, pulling it up over her hips, adjusting the sleeves. Then came the corset. Her mother took charge, lacing it up from the back, pulling each ribbon with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Sarah felt the pressure immediately. Her ribs compressed, her diaphragm tightened. She tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like breathing through a straw. "Mom, it's too tight," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Linda didn't hear her. Or maybe she did and chose to ignore it. She pulled the laces tighter. "Almost there, sweetheart. Just a little more." One of the bridesmaids, Jessica, noticed Sarah's face. "Mrs. Mitchell, I think she's having trouble breathing." Linda glanced up, irritated. "She's fine. Every bride feels like this. It's normal." But it wasn't normal. Sarah felt her vision start to tunnel. Her hands went cold. A sharp pain shot through her chest. She reached back, trying to grab the laces, trying to loosen them herself, but her mother swatted her hand away. "Stop fidgeting. You're going to ruin the lacing." Sarah tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her throat felt tight. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She took one step forward and felt her legs buckle beneath her. The sound of her body hitting the floor was like a gunshot in the small room. Everyone screamed at once. Jessica dropped to her knees beside Sarah, shaking her shoulders. "Sarah! Sarah! Can you hear me?" Sarah's eyes were open, but unfocused. Her chest was rising and falling in shallow, rapid gasps. Her lips had a faint blue tinge. Linda stood frozen, her hands still holding the corset laces, her face drained of color. "She's just nervous," Linda said, but her voice cracked. "She's fine. She just needs a minute." Jessica looked up at her, furious. "She's not fine. Look at her. She can't breathe." Another bridesmaid ran to the door and shouted for Tom. He was downstairs with the groomsmen, completely unaware of what was happening. When he heard the screaming, he took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding. He reached the bridal suite and pounded on the door. "Sarah, open the door." But the door was locked. Linda had locked it earlier to keep people from walking in during photos. "Open the door." Tom shouted again, his voice breaking. Inside, Jessica fumbled with the lock, finally getting it open. Tom burst in and saw Sarah on the floor, pale, gasping. Her mother still holding the corset laces like she didn't know what else to do. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Let's see who's truly following till the end. Tom didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees beside Sarah and started loosening the corset himself, his hands shaking. "What the hell happened?" Jessica answered for everyone. "The corset. It's too tight. She can't breathe." Linda finally snapped out of her daze. "Don't undo it. The dress will be ruined." Tom turned to her, his face a mask of rage and fear. "I don't care about the dress. I care about her." He pulled at the laces, loosening them as quickly as he could. The moment the pressure released, Sarah gasped. A deep, desperate gulp of air that sounded like she'd been drowning. Her color started to return slowly. Her breathing evened out. Tom held her face in his hands. "Sarah, look at me. You're okay. You're okay now." She nodded weakly, tears streaming down her face, smudging the makeup that had taken an hour to apply. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a sob. The room was silent except for Sarah's ragged breathing. The photographer, who had been documenting everything, quietly lowered his camera. The makeup artist stood in the corner, unsure of what to do. Jessica sat back on her heels, relieved but still shaking. And Linda, for the first time in months, looked at her daughter and really saw her. Saw the exhaustion, the fear, the pain, and maybe, just maybe, she saw her own reflection in Sarah's eyes. The reflection of a woman who had pushed too hard, wanted too much, ignored too many warning signs. "I'm sorry," Linda whispered, but it sounded hollow. Sarah didn't respond. She couldn't. She was too focused on breathing, on feeling her lungs expand fully for the first time in hours. Tom helped her sit up slowly, supporting her back. "We need to call a doctor," he said. Linda shook her head. "She's fine now. Look, she's breathing. She just panicked." Tom looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "She didn't panic, Linda. She almost passed out because you laced that thing so tight her body shut down." Linda's face hardened. "I was just trying to make her look beautiful." Tom's voice was ice. "She is beautiful. She doesn't need to suffer to prove that." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Linda opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. She looked at Sarah, still sitting on the floor, still crying, and something inside her cracked. She'd spent so long planning this day, imagining it, controlling every detail, that she'd forgotten the most important thing. This wasn't her wedding, it was Sarah's. And Sarah was in pain. Real, physical pain. Because of her, Linda sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said quietly. "I just wanted everything to be perfect." Jessica, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Perfect doesn't mean anything if she can't breathe." Tom helped Sarah to her feet slowly, making sure she was steady before letting go. "Do you want to cancel?" he asked her gently. "We can. Right now. We can call it off, and no one will blame you." Sarah shook her head. "No, I want to get married. I just..." She looked down at the dress, at the corset that had nearly crushed her, and made a decision. "I can't wear this. Not like this." Linda looked up, horrified. But the dress. Sarah met her mother's eyes, and for the first time in her life, she didn't back down. "I don't care about the dress, Mom. I care about being able to breathe." Tom squeezed her hand. "So what do you want to do?" Sarah thought for a moment, then turned to Jessica. "Do you still have that sundress you brought as a backup? The white one?" Jessica nodded. "Yeah, it's in my bag." "Why?" Sarah smiled for the first time all morning. "Can I borrow it?" 20 minutes later, Sarah walked down the aisle. Not in the custom gown that cost thousands of dollars. Not in the corset that nearly killed her, but in a simple white sundress that hit just below her knees, with her hair down and minimal makeup. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers one of the bridesmaids had picked from the hotel garden. She looked nothing like the bride her mother had envisioned, but she looked like herself, and when Tom saw her, standing at the altar with tears in his eyes, he knew she'd never looked more beautiful. The guests whispered, "Of course, they always do," but Sarah didn't hear them. She was too busy breathing deeply, freely, easily, feeling the air fill her lungs without restriction, feeling her heart beat steady and strong, feeling alive. The ceremony was short. The vows were simple. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Tom kissed her gently, and the room erupted in applause. Linda sat in the front row, crying, not tears of joy, exactly, but something more complicated. Regret, maybe, relief, shame. When Sarah and Tom walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, Linda caught her daughter's eye. Sarah paused, just for a moment, and gave her mother a small, forgiving smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough. At the reception, people asked about the dress. Sarah laughed and told them the truth. "The corset tried to kill me, so I changed." Some people thought she was joking. Others looked uncomfortable. But Sarah didn't care. She danced with Tom. She ate cake. She laughed with her friends. And most importantly, she breathed. Deeply, fully, without pain. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the decorations were being taken down, Sarah and Tom sat on the hotel balcony, looking out at the city lights. He asked her if she regretted anything. She thought about it for a long time before answering. "I regret letting it get that far. I regret not listening to my body. I regret almost letting my mother's dreams matter more than my own health." He nodded. "But you stopped it. In the end, you chose yourself." She smiled. "Yeah, I did." 6 months later, Sarah received a package in the mail. Inside was the custom wedding gown, neatly folded, with a note from Mrs. Delacroix. It read, "I heard what happened. I'm sorry. I should have listened when you said it was too tight. I've altered the corset. It's looser now. Maybe you can wear it for your anniversary, or pass it on to someone else. Either way, I hope you know that beauty should never come at the cost of your health. I'm learning that now. Better late than never." Sarah stared at the dress for a long time. Then she carefully folded it back up, placed it in a storage box, and put it in the back of her closet. She didn't need it anymore. She'd already had her perfect wedding, and it had nothing to do with the dress. Now, let me ask you something. How many times in your life have you ignored your own discomfort because someone else told you it was normal? How many times have you pushed through pain because you didn't want to disappoint someone, or because you thought suffering was just part of the process? Sarah's story isn't unique. Every day, women are told that beauty requires sacrifice, that discomfort is temporary, that if you want to be admired, you have to endure. But here's the truth that nobody talks about. Your body knows when something is wrong. It sends you signals: pain, dizziness, shortness of breath. And when you ignore those signals, when you silence your own instincts in favor of someone else's vision of perfection, you put yourself at risk. Real risk. Not hypothetical, not exaggerated. Real, physical danger. Think about the women you know. Your mother, your sister, your daughter, your friend. How many of them have worn shoes that made their feet bleed because they looked good? How many have skipped meals before an event to fit into a dress? How many have smiled through pain because they didn't want to make a scene? This isn't about vanity. This is about a culture that teaches women their worth is tied to how they look, and that looking good is worth any price. Even their health, even their lives. Sarah was lucky. She collapsed in a room full of people who could help her. But what if she'd been alone? What if she'd been walking down the aisle when it happened? What if Tom hadn't been there to loosen the corset? These aren't hypothetical questions. They're real possibilities that happen more often than you think. The wedding industry makes billions of dollars every year selling brides the fantasy of perfection. The perfect dress, the perfect hair, the perfect body. And somewhere along the way, the bride herself gets lost. Her comfort, her health, her voice. Sarah's mother wasn't a villain. She wasn't trying to hurt her daughter. She was just doing what she thought was right, based on what she'd been taught. That a wedding is the most important day of a woman's life. That it has to be perfect. That anything less is failure. But what Linda learned that day, standing in that bridal suite watching her daughter struggle to breathe, is that perfection is an illusion, and chasing it can cost you everything. The real beauty of Sarah's wedding wasn't the dress or the flowers or the venue. It was the moment she chose herself. The moment she said no. The moment she took off the corset and put on a sundress and walked down the aisle as herself, not as someone else's vision of what a bride should be. So here's what I want you to take away from this. If you're planning a wedding, or helping someone plan one, please remember this. The dress doesn't matter. The decorations don't matter. The guest list doesn't matter. What matters is that at the end of the day, two people who love each other make a commitment to each other. Everything else is just noise. And if something is hurting you, physically or emotionally, you have every right to stop. To change your mind. To choose differently. You don't owe anyone your suffering. Not your mother. Not your friends. Not tradition. Not Instagram. Nobody. Your body is telling you something when it hurts. Listen to it. Your instincts are warning you when something feels wrong. Trust them. And if someone tells you that beauty requires pain, that discomfort is normal, that you just need to push through, remember Sarah. Remember the sound of her gasping for air. And ask yourself if any dress, any photograph, any moment of admiration is worth that. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt pressured to ignore your own discomfort for the sake of appearances? Have you ever pushed through pain because you didn't want to disappoint someone? And if you were Sarah's mother, looking back on that day, what would you have done differently? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you learned something today, if this story made you think, if it made you feel, then please subscribe to our channel so you never miss another story like this. Because these stories matter. They're not just entertainment. They're warnings. They're lessons. They're reminders that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is take off the corset and just breathe. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. And remember, you are already enough.